morning, good morning. We're good? Say that? Okay, good morning everybody. Welcome back, I missed you. It's good to be back. Hoidu Lashem Kitayv, Kilei Elam Chazdai. Had an unexpected kidney stone situation, but Baruch Hashem, we're good. Thank God. Okay, so we're in the middle of the Maamar of Shabbos Vayakhel-Pekudei, Parshas Parah, which is also Mavarchim Nissen, Tavshin Chaf Aleph. The Maamar from the Rebbe, from the Lubavitcher Rebbe, 1961, which begins on the pasuk Zos Chukas Hatorah Shetziv Hashem Leimer Vayikchu Elecha Parah Aduma Tmima. Yeah, that was the beginning of the Maamar. I think we had two classes, so today we're going to continue. We are up to page we're up to the bottom of page 191. Bottom of 191, the middle of Sif Daled. The middle of Sif Daled, I think. Today's class is dedicated by Rachi Smetana to all those and in honor of all those who are committed to learning, growing, and bringing more light into the world. Wow. Okay. That's a very special tribute, very unique tribute. Thank you. Thank you so much, and same to you. They say in English, it takes one to know one. Yeah. So thank you very much. And everybody who's here is also committed to that, and a lot of people. So may everybody have all the strength and the stamina and vigor and empowerment to be able to continue to be beacons of light for ourselves and for others. And thank you very much, Rachi. So the Maamar started off with the Medrash that David HaMelech says in Tehillim in Kapitel Kuf Yutes. David asks a very interesting request. He says, Yehi libi samim b'chukecha. My heart should be tamim, which means whole, complete, from the word tamimus, which is actually also the word by Parah Aduma, tamima, whole. My heart should be whole with your laws, with your statutes. Literally it means I should make peace with them. My heart should be at peace with them. My heart should be whole. B'chukecha. I should be sincerely committed to them. I should appreciate them. Like you say, my heart should be whole with you, towards you. But the Medrash says, as always, every word is meticulous. The word is b'chukecha. Your chukim. Doesn't say mitzvaysecha, eidvaysecha, and kuf yutes. Every pasuk has a different expression for Torah and mitzvahs. Torah secha, eidvaysecha, chukecha. The Medrash says that it's referring to specifically two types of mitzvahs on which the Torah says Zos Chukas, and those are only two mitzvahs: Pesach and Parah Aduma. And the fact that they're both read, Parshas Parah, and then this week Parshas Pekudei. Parshas Parah begins Zos Chukas Hatorah. This is the law of the Torah: take a red heifer, take a red cow. And in the Parshas Pekudei, which is actually going to be read this coming Shabbos, in our year, Tavshin Pekudei, it's from Parshas Pekudei. Over there also, the language is Zos Chukas HaPesach. This is the law of Pesach. And we don't have other mitzvahs that have a same introduction, Zos Chukas. So they obviously have something similar to each other. And by Parah Aduma, you could not say the word Chukah represents a certain quality of this mitzvah, as explained in Rashi and in Mefarshim, that it's super rational. But Karban Pesach is part of many other karbanos. But it's the one karban that's called Zos Chukas HaPesach. And the Medrash says that obviously they're similar to each other. And that's what David says, Yehi libi samim b'chukecha. Why is he asking about these? You need to understand that. Then the Medrash continues, and we don't know which one is greater. There's two, and they're similar, and they have the same expression, but which one is greater, we don't know. Which is also a difficult thing. Like, why are we suddenly comparing? I mean, you could do that about every mitzvah. Why do you have to say the greater, not greater? I mean, he says, you don't know which is greater. like as though we're stuck somewhere. And then he gives this whole mashal. You remember the mashal that there were two queens, there were two matronissas, there were two women who were daimas. They were very similar. A matronissa in Aramaic is a queen. They were very similar. And they were walking together, and from appearance they looked shavais, they looked identical. In other words, you wouldn't know that one is superior to the other. One has more dignity or more status or more royalty or whatever. You wouldn't know. And then how do you know? Again, the same question. It's a strange mashal. Like, why do you have to know? I mean, two people walking. They're walking. I mean, who's greater? I mean, like right away, you have to ask if there's a competition. You want to know? So how do you know? So he says the other one is escorting her all the way to the house and won't let her be alone. She understands that she has to be there till the end, and she escorts her, and then she leaves. So you understand that the person who got the escort all the way home must be of greater stature. So he says, by Pesach it says chukah, by Parah it says chukah. You don't know which is greater. However, you see that the Parah Aduma is necessary for those who eat the Korban Pesach. I could do Parah Aduma and not eat the Korban Pesach. The Parah Aduma doesn't need Pesach. Pesach needs Parah. Because if a person is Tameh, they can't bring a carbon and they can't eat a carbon. That's where the whole story of Pesach Sheni happened, because there were people who were Tameh. And when Moshe said to bring a Korban Pesach, they couldn't. You weren't allowed to be makriv a Pesach. Further, they can't go into the Mishkan or the Bais Medrash. Even if they don't go in, you can't be makriv a Pesach for them. And they can't eat it. They're not allowed to eat it. So Mela, and that's the reason we read Parshas Parah before Parshas HaChodesh. Because before the Chodesh Nisan, you read Parshas HaChodesh, because that's all the halachas of the beginning of Nisan. The main thing is the Korban Pesach, which you have to prepare. But before that, you still need a Parah Aduma. That's the reason why we take a read Parshas Parah every year. Because in the time of the Bais HaMikdash, everybody had to make sure that they were cleansed completely from any tumah. So other tumahs are not difficult. You go to the mikveh, and you wait till the night, and you're cleansed. But Parah Aduma is a complicated process, because first of all, you need 7 days. And second of all, you need the cleansing of the red heifer. So it's a process. It's not just you go to the mikveh that night. Other tumahs, you can go to the mikveh that night, you're good. But Parah Aduma, you need a process. So mainly they read Parshas Parah to tell the olam, to tell the crowd that everyone needs a Parah Aduma if they need it, and then they could do the Korban Pesach. So in Mela, Pesach needs Parah. Parah doesn't need Pesach. So this is like a metaphor that Parah gets escorted. Parah gets escorted by the Korban Pesach. The Korban Pesach needs the Parah Aduma. And therefore it proves to you that the Parah is greater. That's what he says. So the whole Medrash is difficult to understand, and that's what the Maamar was focusing on. So he went into the whole Indian. You remember that in Parshas Vayakhel, the only malacha of Shabbos that's specified is not to light fire. Why this one? There's 39 prototypes of malachas that are forbidden, prototypes of labors. Lamed tes avos malachas, and so many toldos, so many branches, offspring. Why does he mention only not to light fire on Shabbos in the beginning of Vayakhel? So he brought from the Shalah that the first malacha of Hashem was that he created light. The first creation, Vayomer Elokim Yehi Or, let there be light. And that's similar to the energy of fire, is the concept of Or. Fire generates light or energy. And as a result of that, when we want to represent and capture the idea of Shabbos, which is not to do the work that God did in creating the world, we use the first thing Hashem did, which is let there be light or let there be fire. And that's also the first one that includes all of the other Maamaras, like it says that on the first day everything was created. So the Maamar of the first day includes all of the 10 Maamaras, and then they were branched out, they came out in different days. In other words, the creation of light, is the creation that encompasses all other creations. Every other creation is some form or some manifestation of light. And therefore, it says, Lo yisevaru eish b'chol mifreseichem b'yom HaShabbos. That's the klolos HaMaamaros. In order to explain this, he went into a whole long explanation of the pasuk. Ki Hashem Elokecha eish oichlahu. Speaking about eish, that your God is a consuming flame. And he started to explain that eish, fire, is different than all the other elements. You remember, that it goes upward. The other elements are different. And that's the idea that on its own, it's not shayach to the mata. On its own, it's not grounded, it's not contained. It's always ascending, it's always ascending. It's in a state of ascent, of aliyah. On the contrary, you need something to hold it down and to ground it. And he explains that Hashem Elokecha, which means even Elokecha, which is already your God. This is the divine, the way it's tailor-made, it's custom-made to every creation. It's called Elokecha, which is Koichacha v'Chayusecha. In other words, it's the way Elokus comes down. It's your energy, it's your consciousness. It's already Elokus, not in its pure infinity, but the way there's a Hamshacha, there's a Yerida. Still, you should know Hashem Elokecha is Be'etzem Eish. Loizo Iker Elokus Masha'olam is Mesavim, and we explained at length. The main inyan of Elokus is not that the worlds come from it. And Mela Mitzad Atzmai, it's Beteva Ha'aliyah, it's by nature. So if you could use the word nature. It's completely infinite and undefined. And that's what the Zohar says, that the Asara Maamaris are called Milin Dehedyoita. The 10 utterances are called Milin Dehedyoita, which means peasant-like words. Verses like the Asara Sadibris. Completely not be'erech, completely not in comparison to the pure, infinite divinity of the Ein Sof itself, because Elokus is nivda legamri minyan ha'olamus. It's completely transcendent from the worlds. And for this, he did a whole explanation of Koil HaNikra B'Shmi v'Lichvoidi Brasev Yitzartev Afasisiv. It's like calling somebody by the name, which brings him, draws him down. That the whole Briya Yitzira Asiyah, the Elokus should come into these worlds. It's Koil HaNikra B'Shmi, it's calling him. Because on its own, it's like the fire which goes up. And on here, there's 3 levels. Briya, Yitzira, Asiyah, connected to Machshava, Dibur, Maisa. Thought, speech, and action. And since the creation is B'Shvil Yisrael, for the Yisrael, they have these 3 aspects. There's the Avodah of Machshava, Dibur, Maisa, and explains the difference of thought, speech, and action. And our thoughts access godliness into the world of Briya, our words into the world of Yitzira, our actions into the world of Asiyah. They also correspond to Torah, Avodah, Gmilus Chasadim. And these are like the wicks that bring down the fire into thought, into speech, into action. Briya is like Machshava, which is a new creation, just like Machshava is the emergence of Isis. Dibur is actualizing it and revealing it. They're already pre-existing, but they come out into words. And then action is already something very concrete that's outside of us completely. And here, it is the Olam Asiyah. Let me just see, my wife is calling 1 second, I'm sorry. Yeah? Hello? Hello? Yeah, I'm here. Hello? Yeah. What did Mommy say? Yeah. And I'll make it, okay? Yeah. Ask her and I'll fix it on the phone. Okay? I'm just teaching now. Hello? Hello, you hear me? Hello? Hello? Okay, sorry. Sorry. So that's Briya Yitzira Asiyah, Machshava Dibur Maisa. And these are like the wicks that channel and ground and bring down, draw down the divine fire and energy into Seder Ishtalshalos, into the cosmos. And that's how powerful our thoughts are, our conscious thoughts are, our words are, and our behaviors. And that's also Avodah and Torah and Gemilas Chsadim, which Avodah is very much connected with Machshava, thought, Kavanas Halev, Re'usa Deliba, Torah with words, V'dibarta, and Gemilas Chasadim is about action. A person can have nice feelings and that's beautiful, but philanthropy, generosity is always about Maisa. It's about what the other person needs. Feelings are obviously important, and words are important, and thoughts are important. But the main idea of Gemilas Chasadim is the action. I told you once a story, I think that there was once a Chassid of the Alter Rebbe, and he told the Alter Rebbe that he gives a lot of tzedakah for poor people, but he doesn't do it with an emes. He doesn't do it with sincerity. He does it because of kavod, or other ulterior motives he has. Maybe he's getting schar, but he doesn't feel that it's done with truthfulness. So the whole thing is worthless. So he said he feeds poor people their bread and milk and whatever they need, water, but it's without sincerity, it's without emes. So they said Alter Rebbe went into a dveikus, like he thought about it, and he meditated for a few minutes. He used to speak with a niggin, and he said, yeah, aber the bread and the milk was the kinder essen, das is emes. The bread is true, it's true. The milk is true, you're right. So in Gemilas Chasadim, the main thing is the ma'aseh, the action, and that's generally many of the mitzvahs. So that division of Bri Yitzir Asi, you also have in Torah Vedic Gemilas Chasadim. And then he added, but Hashem Elokecha is eish, oichla. An eish always eats something up. A fire can't exist if it doesn't consume. And that's the concept of bittul. And the whole arichas of what we had, what bittul, surrender means. That it's not just the Torah and mitzvahs themselves, but it's the bittul that comes with it. Like the Gemara says that an arrogant person, Hashem says, I can't live with him under the same roof. When this bittul is missing, when this surrender is missing, so then it's not just that the fire can't come down and it remains up, but even more, you're doichek ragalei hashchina. You push it. The Gemara says that arrogance pushes away the legs of the shchina. It would be like if the shchina is walking and you cut off its legs, literally. You push away its legs. In other words, there's no space for you in this world. Because bittul is what creates the space. The suspension of ego creates the space for the divine truth, for the divine infinity. That's the eish oichlahu. And that's the Torah mitzvahs with bittul. All this, he said in Siv Dalet, is avodas tzadikim, meaning this is somebody who follows the healthy, functional, spiritually intuned trajectory of life. It's called Derech HaMelech. Derech HaMelech means the path of the king, which literally means the beaten path, the paved path in the jungle of life. And he puts a Derech HaMelech, Malka Shalolim, the king of the world. Which probably the diuk of Malka Shalolim is that since he's the king of the world, so Mela, he knows what's the right path to be able to live in the world in the healthiest and most productive and meaningful way. But then you have a situation where somebody is missing this. As he puts it, it can be missing in the avoid of one of these three kavim of Torah, avoid, Gemilas Chasadim, of Machshava, Dibur, Ma'aseh, and therefore the flow or the grounding or the accessing of Hashem Elokecha Eish Oichlahu is missing. And he said, and here we come to the concept of tshuva. The tikkun, the healing for it, the fixing of it is tshuva. And on this Chazal say, in brachas, it's an argument in brachas, but the Rambam and Hilchas Tshuva paskins that way. The makom shebali tshuva im ein tzadikim murim yichaylam lamed. The place of bali tshuva, tzadikim can't even stand. So this is with tshuva doesn't only complement or heal, but it reaches a place where tzadikim can't even stand. And this is another path. When the whole Lechatchili was speaking about the path of Hashem Elokecha Eish Oichlahu, that the fire of divinity, which is completely transcendent, is brought down into the world, and it's felt into the world, and it's generally Kala Nikra B'Shmi V'Lechvoi Dibrasav Yitzartev Afasisav Bri Yitzir Asiya Machshava Dibra Ma'aseh Torah V'Veidik Gemilas Chasadim, and those are the wicks that channel the divine flame, the divine light, the divine energy, and it's done in a way of Eish Oichel. It eats up, it consumes, because there's the bittul. That's the avodas. That's called avodas tzadikim. And then when that's missing, you have what's called avodas tshuva. So now he continues in that second path. Yeah. I think that's what we're holding with Tzarech Lahavin. It's the middle of Siv Dalet, if you could see. The line closer to the end of the page, the line starts Tzadikim Gemurim Yechelim Lamed By. Where Bali Tshuva stands, Tzadikim can't stand. Tzarech Lahavin, and here we have to understand a big question. What's the shaila? Why is it that the quality, the maila of a Baal Tshuva is so much greater. What's the question? It says in Zohar that the work of a baal teshuva needs to be b'chele yater. B'chele yater means with more chayil, with more vigor, with more strength. That we could understand. Since he became further distant from his source, so he has to work harder. If there's a slope, if there's a mountain, right, and the lower you go, so you have to climb higher. And the climbing may be difficult, so you need more energy, more fortitude, more resilience, because of the distance. That I understand. This means the true, even a complete tzadik who serves Hashem with awe and with love, which are blissful. Nonetheless, as the Tanya says, he's called a Yesh Misha Ayev. Yesh Misha Ayev is in Tanya Lamed Hey, 35, chapter 35. Yesh Misha Ayev means there's still somebody who loves. The very fact that I love and I have Yira means there's still a Yesh Misha Ayev. So there's also a distance. Even a tzaddik needs to recognize this. And Fakir, the real tzaddik, recognizes this deeply. So why are you saying this person is distant from the source? He's also distant from the source. But still, you can't compare the distance of Yesh Misha Ayev to the distance that comes through sin and betrayal. It's a different type of distance. There's a distance of Yesh Misha Ayev, which is the very definition of existence. Even when I'm in love, I am in love. When I am in awe, I am in awe. It's my feeling, it's my experience. Okay? So complete bittul b'metzias of Einayd Malvada you don't have. That's what he explains over there at length in Tanya. Even when a tzaddik needs Torah mitzvahs. Because l'chayda, it says in Zohar that the Shekhinah is always on our head, like a fire. It's like a fire. The fire needs a wick, that's the guf. The guf is the wick that holds the Shekhinah. But the wick itself burns up in a few minutes. You need oil. The oil is what fuels the flame and could continue burning your whole life. Like you have oil, physically oil, you put in oil and the menorah could burn and burn and burn and burn for a day, for a night, for a week, whatever it is. The oil, says the Zohar, is uvda and tov in his mitzvahs. As the Alter Rebbe, the Zohar should have said something much more obvious. The neshama is the oil. The soul is the oil. You have a chelik alakam imal. Why do you need Torah mitzvahs as the oil? The Zohar doesn't say that. The guf is the wick. The Shekhinah is the fire. And by the way, the Zohar says that's why we wear a yarmulke, because that represents the eish of the Shekhinah that's on top of the head. It's al reishe. That's the eish. But an eish needs psila, like we're learning the whole Maamar. You need to ground it. So you have the psila and you have the oil. The psila is the guf, the physical body, and the Torah mitzvahs is the oil, like we learned before. Torah, avodah, gemilas chesed, that's all the wick and the oil together. So the Alter Rebbe asks in Tanya Pedek Lamed Hey, it's the shiurim of the last few days, those who learned chitas last week, the beginning of the week. Why is it that the neshama is not enough? And this is what he answers. That the definition of oil, what allows oil to produce a flame, is that the oil is completely consumed by the flame. There's nothing left. When you look at the flame, the oil is completely finished. There's nothing left. He says, even a tzaddik, in his love and his awe, mitzad, his soul is still yesh misha ayev. It's yesh misha ayev. And that's why Torah mitzvahs, that is Hashem's ratzon itself, without any concealment. It's complete oneness. That's the main arichas over there in Tanya. So that's what he's saying. So even though he's also distant from his source, but you can't compare this distance to the distance of a chet, to the distance of complete disconnection, at least in the person's own mind and consciousness. So we could understand that the baal teshuva needs chele yater. That's what the Zohar means. Chele yater, more strength, more vigor, more stamina, more passion. But here we're not just saying they need more strength. We're saying that they reach a place where the tzadik could never reach. That doesn't even seem fair. Even though he's also distant For this, we need to understand there's a story in Gemara, Meseches Avodah Zarah, like he says in 44, Avodah Zarah Daf Yud Zayin. Gematria Toif, Daf Yud Zayin Amud Aleph. It's a whole story about a man named Elazar ben Durdaya, and the Gemara says over there, you remember the story, that he was a great, great sinner. And lo hiniach isha zayna, there was not even a single zayna, a harlot, that he didn't go visit. I mean, he was very, very, as you would say, morally depraved, a very, very serious degenerate. And the Gemara says over there, it's a long story, that there was a zayna he heard about, Bekrachi Hayam, very, very far away, but he never resisted from traveling anywhere to be able to fulfill his cravings or his addictions. That's how passionate he was. And he went, and he had to spend a lot of money, and he finally came to the person. And the Gemara is very graphic, that B'shas Hergel Dover, when they were in the middle of their work, so he gave a neficha. Neficha is he let out air. He passed air, as they say. So she said to him that you remind me of that neficha. You remind me of this air. He didn't expect to have a psazashir in the middle, so he says mapshat. So she says, just like this neficha is gone forever. There's nothing. It's released and it's lost. It's gone with the wind. Let's hope, right? So she says, that's you. That's you're a replica of this neficha. She told us to him, yeah. As Farbrengen in the middle of the most corrupt moment. Huh? It could be she said l'chaim afterwards also. I don't know. The Gemara doesn't say that. Huh? So you can understand. And the Gemara says she hit the spot. Nothing hit the spot. She hit the spot. She got him. Like she got him. It's interesting. The Rebbe Rashab, the fifth Adar, writes in one of his Maamarim, I think Tofresh Ayin, the Maamarim of Ette, 1910. I think it was that Rebbe Elazar ben Durdaya, he was a pnimi. He was a real person. He was a big, big sinner, but he was a real person. In other words, when somebody got him, they got him. Like when she hit the spot, nobody should hit his spot. She painted a picture of who he is. And he left, and he decided to change his whole life. And that's when the Gemara says that he went to the heaven and earth, and he went to the sun and the moon, and he went to the mountains, and he was sobbing and asking all of them to help him. And all of them said, we're trying to help ourselves. We can't help you. However, yeah, this very, very deep story. They all said, we're trying to help. We're vulnerable. So he says, Ein adavar tali elabi. I'm the only one who can help myself. And that's what he brings here. He started to cry. And he cried for so long and so intense that he expired. That's what the Gemara says. That yatsa nishmase. Ga b'bchiyat yatsa nishmase. And there was a baskel, a voice that said, Rebbe Elazar ben Durdaya is mezumah l'chaya elam haba. He's going to elam haba. When Rabbi heard the story, Rabbi Yehuda Nasi, the editor of the Mishnah, so the Gemara says, Bacha Rabbi, he started to cry. And he said, some of us acquire our elam haba over many, many years. And some of us acquire our elam haba b'shah achas, in 1 hour. V'lo they're even called Rabbi, because the baskel said, Rabbi Elazar ben Durdaya, Adar yoim. They don't call him Elazar ben Durdaya, even though he didn't die as a Talmid Chacham, a Poisek, a Rav, a Dayan, a Mashpia, a Rosh Hashiva, a Rebbe. He died Elazar ben Durdaya, but he got a name, Adar Yoim Hazeh. He's called in Gemara, Rabbi Elazar ben Durdaya. So Rabbi said, Rabbi Yehuda Nasi, not only does he get Elam Haba, as the Rebbe geworden. In the process, he became a Rebbe too. This is all the Gemara in Avodah Zarah. Huh? Yeah, without the Shishi. Without shlishi, without mafte. That's the ma'aser. But tzarich lahavin, here you have to understand, hatinich ma shemoichelin lo yavei noisef. Shezam b'nei shasir tshuva, shadez in eschapel even esratzel HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Ukama shekasav Rambam, g'doy l'tshuva shemekareves es adam l'shchina hayoim hu ohu v'nechmot karev v'yedid chuli. We can understand the concept that a person is forgiven for their sins. That's what tshuva is. Tshuva is accountability. Tshuva is remorse. Tshuva is introspection. Charata, Kabbalah. That's the process of tshuva. So the person is forgiven. And that's what it means. You're atoned. And nisratza. Nisratza means the relationship is now a positive one. It's a good one. That's what the Rambam says in Hilchas Tshuva Perek Zayin. He quotes. The Rambam says, G'doy l'tshuva. That yesterday the person was in such a lowly state, and today he's called Ohuv and Nechmad and Karev and Yedid. He's beloved and he's precious and he's close and he's like a best friend. Yesterday you could see and perceive him as an enemy, and today you're so close to him. That's how close he is to the Shekhinah. And that's because of the transformation the person went through. But the Rebbe says something deeper. He doesn't say he was forgiven. He says, kainai lamai. He acquired his world. Einay moving. Eich efshe shetiyetz leyam shacher sheyiknei lamai. Harei al gimel dvarim meilam oimed ala teira ala veidag melis chsadim v'kivon shetz lei chasru gimel amodim elu. Harei loi bana se lamai v'im keinech yiknei lamai. But here Rebbe says he acquired a world. A world you acquire from building the world. You have to construct the world. Olam haba is not a bizarre, you come to some amusement park in heaven that's waiting for you and here are the tickets. You built it. You built it through your life. Olam haba is just a revelation of what's happening really in Olam haza. In Olam haza there are curtains. And Olam haba you get to see it. But you get to see what's happening now. It says in Kabbalah, in Asara Maamar, the Alter Rebbe brings it in the Gersa in Tanya, that a person walks around, they're walking in the Avir Gan Eden or the Avir Gehenim. It doesn't happen. It's happening there. Some people who have a chush, they could see. It says when Esav walked in, what did Yitzchak felt? Vayakhel Yitzchak charad the gedola ad l'ma'od. So Rashi says the Gehenim walked in. Would the Gehenim walk in? He walked in with food. The pshat is the Gehenim always walks in, or the Gan Eden walks in. It says when Yaakov walked in, Vayarach is Reich. Rashi says it was Reich Gan Eden. Those who have a smell, those who are sensitive, the Gan Eden and Gehenim are created here. It's the energy of the person. It's what energy I'm living in. That energy continues, and that's where a person needs to go through the process of cleansing. So I'd understand that Blazar ben Adaya did teshuva, and you could be forgiven. But it's not similar to another person who built the world over 80 years, 90 years, 100 years, 120 years, or whatever the time that they were allotted. Here, Rebbe doesn't only say he was forgiven. Rebbe says, Yesh koinai lama, exactly similar to the person who took him a lifetime to be koinai lama because he's boinai lama, he built the world. And l'chayra, as we said before, the world is built through three things. And here, obviously, all three were missing. It wasn't just one was missing. The explanation in both of these ideas. What ideas? Number one, number one, that through tshuva, he acquires his whole world. The whole Olam Haba. And that caused Rebbe to cry. It's also not so clear. The Gemara says, Bacher Rebbe. Why did he cry? Why did he cry? Somebody once said he was jealous. But that's a shtus, it's an insanity. Yeah. Bacher Rebbe, he cried. Yeah. A person doesn't, so the Rebbe was like, I had to work my whole life and this guy gets away with murder. But obviously understand that such a comment completely, somebody who doesn't understand the Ganze Inyan. So obviously it touched Rebbe in a very deep place. It wasn't just an emotion. It was such an emotion, Rebbe experienced it through tears. What was it? And then Rebbe says, and they call him Rebbe. What was he upset? So they call him Rebbe. Well, you're the only one who's called Rebbe? It's almost like, well, how did you become a Rebbe suddenly? Willst du about tshuva, sei about tshuva, but du hättest nicht kein Rebbe on me. We'll honor you, we'll make a dinner, we'll write a book about you. Yeah. Art School publish a beautiful book about your tshuva, gewaldig. Maybe it'll be a bestseller. A Rebbe, mach don't become a Rebbe on me. I worked my whole life to become this. So obviously Rebbe was touched by something very deep. So he says the explanation in all of this, side that he's koinai lama, and nachmer, as we said before, real Baal Tshuva reaches a place that the tzadik can't reach. Eino yachal. Not because the tzaddik is not a special person, but by definition of who he is, he can't reach this place. Who? So you have to understand, tshuva is not just you're making up for what's missing. That's one vart, and that's a very powerful vart, but then you can't reach to a place that the tzaddik can't reach. You can't reach a place that the tzaddik doesn't reach. You could say you get close. You could say you make up, you're forgiven. He's saying you have to understand that tshuva is a different inyan. The real inyan of tshuva is that the hamshacha, the flow, that comes through tshuva, it comes from a place where there was no blemish. So we're talking the whole ma'amik, that godliness is eish. And eish you need to be able to bring down. You need to ground it. Naturally, it's much higher. And that's the whole avodah of the Jew, and the whole avodah of the good person whom we're calling a tzadik, meaning the natural way of living is to constantly create the wick and the oil to bring down the eish, which in simple terms we could understand what that means, right? It's imagine that there's a fire, the Shekhinah is over your head, but the fire can only exist if there's a wick and there's oil. If not, the fire right away departs. So it's a conscious effort to light a fire. It's not like other things in the world. Afar, the earth stays. You don't have to do anything. The mayim stays. You don't have to do anything. The ruach stays. You don't have to do anything. Fire is different. Fire defies gravity in English. It goes away. You have to bring it down. You have to bring it down. That's why avodas Hashem can't happen by default mode. Cruise control. That's not avodas Hashem. Going into cruise control is good for a highway. Or today they're already having the automatic cars. You don't have to do anything. You just go in and get schluffen, right? It'll take you where it has. What are these cars called? Autonomous? Yeah. But Eish doesn't work that way. Something has to give. Something has to yield. Something has to surrender. Eish oichla. Eish always has to eat something up. You have to feed it. You have to feed the Eish. And there's I just want to emphasize the depth that when he speaks that Eish goes upward. Right? Elikus is beteva ha'aliyah l'mayla. What does that mean practically? One of the things it means practically is there's different frequencies available in the universe at any moment that you could tune into at any moment. Some of those frequencies are very low. They're not like Eish. Meaning, because they're connected to the earth, so gravity is very, very powerful. So they're actually very low, so they're available. What they call low-hanging fruits. You know what low-hanging fruits are? You come to a tree, the fruit is low. You could just pick up your hand and take the grapes. It's low-hanging fruit. Eish is a high-hanging fruit, meaning it's much higher. It's actually always going up. So you have to climb. You have to go away from gravity in order to bring it down. So for example, if you want to tune into the frequency of guilt or shame or despair, yiyush, or negativity or toxicity, these are very available frequencies. They're all over the place. It's low-hanging fruit. It's a dog. Yeah. There's an old Chassidic cynical joke. I know I should say it, but it's somebody said it to me from a particular group. So he said that there was somebody who called himself a big Rebbe, and he went Rosh Hashanah for Tashlich. So they say by the Rebbe of Melech, of Elizans, the Noimeli Melech, that when he went away from the river of Tashlich, so there were Chassidim that jumped into the water. They said, why? They said, Mevila Nemen the Rebbe's Avedas. We want to get to the Rebbe Melech's Avedas we would like to take home for ourselves. So I don't know if it's a real story, it was just a metaphor, but that's what they say. So he says that one of the people who called himself Rebbe also went to Tashlach. When he left, the Chassidim jumped in, and all of them jumped in to take. So they got a big fight. It's a big fight in the water. Who's going to get it? So the Rabbi screams, "Medav zech nit stuppen, so dog nig for alaman." He says, "You don't have to push. There's enough for everybody. It's fine. You could distribute." I'll call upon him. I didn't know if I should say it, but okay, if I apply it, we have to apply it. The best person is, sometimes to look inward. But so you have low-hanging, it's available. But there's frequencies that are higher. For example, the frequency of surrender, of trust, of faith, of love, they're also available. But they're the pchin of Eish. They're oila lamayla. I can't just, you have to work on it. Yeah, there's a consciousness that's necessary. And there's going to be thoughts that will take you away from it. So this is where the person's consciousness is necessary. It's not a torturous consciousness. Once you go there, it's like fire. It goes up. It's a higher consciousness. But it's beteva ha'aliyah. It's beteva ha'avdallah. Beteva, it's upward. And therefore when you touch it, you also defy gravity. There's something higher about the person's energy. They're much more regulated. They're in a more serene space. So that's the derech of Hashem Elokecha Eish Eichlahu. And that's why the person needs to have that inner discipline, because it's so easy to fall prey to frequencies that are just, they're much lower. When I mean much lower, I don't mean physically, this is the first floor, this is the second floor. I mean spiritually, they're lower, they're more available within the coping mechanisms of people. When the person doesn't have this, so then there's the avoid of teshuva. So he says teshuva is not just you're trying to get back. You're going to a place that's completely higher where there is no blemish. We explained before that the three pillars, Torah, Vedic, Milas, Chasadim, are the vessels to access the divine light that is compared to fire. But when one is blemished, or when one blemishes their Torah mitzvahs, so what happens to the oil? It ascends, it departs like fire. Maamar, as it says in the introduction of Tikkun Zohar, it's called Pasach Eliyahu. V'chad ant tistalik minayu ushtaru kula kegufa b'la nishmasa. When you depart from them, they're like bodies without souls. The fire left, the energy left, the light left. So it's like a corpse. It's a gufa b'la nishmasa. Because there's no higher energy in it. There was ant tistalik minayu. This is all if you're talking about the revealed fire. But there's two types of fires. There's the revealed fire, and then there's what's called the concealed fire. For example, fire in a coal. Sometimes you look at a coal, it looks like there's nothing there. You have a coal that is on fire on the outside. The coal is burning, and then you know not to touch it. But sometimes you look at a coal, it looks like gechalam aimamas, it looks like it's extinguished. Really? You touch it, it's hot. And if you fan it, you blow on it, or you fan it, suddenly a fire comes out. Where was this fire? It was there, but it was behelim, it was concealed. But then you have something even deeper. You have tzur chalamish. You know what tzur chalamish is? You know what that is? Anybody knows what tzur chalamish is? In English, I think it's called a flintstone. A flintstone could be in water for thousands of years, but there's fire in it. And when you strike it very hard, sparks come out and you could start a fire. So it's a funny thing. If it was in water for 100 years or 1,000 years, if you put a coal in water 100 years, you're not going to have a fire afterwards. Maybe for a few minutes the fire will remain, but afterwards it's going to be extinguished. That's what water does to fire. It's certainly to conceal. But here you have an Esha B'tzura Chalamish. The fire could remain potentially there. So he says the reason is because it's not B'chinas Metzias Eish. It's not a Metzias of Eish. So what is it? The Eish is there, but it's not a Metzias. If it's a Metzias of Eish, the water can get to it. If it's not a Metzias of Eish, the water can't get there. Water can extinguish fire that has an identity. But here, the reality of the fire is so latent, it's so dormant, it's so concealed, but it's not just potential. It's not just one day, the potential is there right now. Now one day, like you say, this person has potential. In 200 years, they'll become a mensch. Here, the spark, when you strike the flintstone, you take it out of the water, fire can come out, sparks can come out. It says, Adam Arishan, Mitzvah Shabbos, right? Hashem gave him wisdom. There was no, Adam got very scared because it was the first time he saw night, because Friday night was still light. The Gemara says in Pesachim, Mitzvah Shabbos, he was afraid, and Hashem gave him wisdom, and he took two of these stones, and he clapped them together, and he created a fire from the tzur chalamish. That's why we say Bais Medrash on Mitzvah Shabbos, because the other Medrash made a Bais Medrash. He celebrated the reality of fire because this is what allowed him to illuminate the darkness, the night. The Gemara in Maseches Pesachim. So obviously, as we'll soon see, there's a deep metaphor here. Other Medrashim was confronted with darkness. So when he confronted darkness, he needed a different type of fire. He needed a fire that came not from the regular source of light, which is the sun, or other sources of light, but from the tzur. Yeah. So this is not a metzias of Eish. And because it's not a metzias of Eish, it's always there. And he says, teshuva is this idea. Hashem alekecha Eish oichlahu, a regular Eish, a revealed Eish. Teshuva also is Eish, but it's a different type of Eish. It's the Eish in the coal, or even deeper, depends on where the person is, the Eish of the tzura chalamish. וכשם שבגשמיס הנה יצוס יש מעצורי די הקוד דווקא, ובכדי לא יצא יש מגחלס מספיק גם נפיחה, ובכדי לא יצא יש מעצורי די הקוד דווקא, כמו כן כאן ברוחני שעבודת התשובה צריך להיות בחילה יתליס מרמר בישראל ריחוק מלכוס, וידי זה ממשיך האש המעצור. Just like when it comes to the flintstone, you can't blow on it, it's not going to help. You have to strike it, and you have to strike it hard. That's what brings out the spark. When it comes to regular fire, you don't have to do anything, it's burning. When it comes to fire in the coal, at least you have to blow. Vayipach. You blow and it brings it out. When it comes to this flintstone, blowing won't help. You have to strike it. So the same is true spiritually. That the real teshuva is, that's Vayakhel-Pekudei. Vayakhel-Pekudei means that there's a deep, not just a blow, but there's a deep hakah that the person needs to be able to experience the grief, the lismarmer beyosim, the word merirus, morer. It's the grief, it's the frustration for the distance. This is what striking is spiritually. Striking doesn't mean he has to take a belt and hit himself. Striking means he has to reveal the fire inside that is so deeply concealed. How are you going to do that? So you have to strike the stone, mean you have to penetrate beyond the external surface and get to the spark. How does a person penetrate beyond the external surface? In physical English, when you get fed up with being fed up. When you get fed up, you're like, I'm done. I am done. That's the strike of the klippe. It penetrates the shell, the husk of the rock. Because at the surface, it's just a rock. There's no fire here. There's no light, there's no fire, there's no spark. It's a hard, tough, harsh rock. Exterior rock and interior rock. So how are you getting there? But the strike somehow brings something out. When a person has that, when the person is fed up and they're frustrated, they feel the deadness of the klipa energy, the nausea of it, the falsehood of it, the stupidity of it, the depression of it, the torture of it. If I'm not aware of that, so then the fire is going to remain concealed in the rock. So it's not about better off. That's what it says. This is the idea of the baal teshuva. He goes to a place where the fire was never extinguished. Before we thought, what does the baal teshuva do? He just tries to make up for what he was missing. Okay, it's a nice thing, but you can't compare it to kainai lama. He's not kainai lama. He's making up as much as he can. If he has another few years to live, okay, Baruch Hashem. Rabbi ben Nodaya died right then. Where was the kainai lama? He just died right then. Even if you're going to forgive him, because his last moments were fine, he was remorseful. Okay, so you forgave him. But a Rebbe he didn't become a teacher. How do you become a Rebbe? Rebbe means teacher. Rabbi, my teacher, my Rav. Rav is a teacher. Where did he become a Rav? So Pashtus, the Welt says, this Gufa, he was a Rebbe. This is what he taught the world, this Gufa. But here we understand, because in that space, you are a teacher. Because in that space, you always had a fire. It's not like he goes to a place, he tries to make up. Because of what happened, he needs to go to a much deeper flame that exists in the Tzur HaChalamish. And over there was never a b'gam. Over there was never extinguished the flame. The flame was always there. It was just in a state of absolute concealment. And that's a completely different spectrum. It's a different magnitude. It's a different madrega, as he says, that b'chinas eish is nailayos. And here we see that this is the whole story that happens in Torah and Chumash. Then we have a hafladik explanation of what happened in Parshas Kisisa after the Jewish people worshipped the golden calf. What creation assumes great significance after the Chet HaEgel? So there's a whole sugya in Parshas Kisisa that we just read 2 weeks ago. What happens after the sin of the golden calf? The Jewish people create a golden calf. Hashem tells Moshe, we're done. Leave me alone. Vachalim, I'm going to eliminate them and I'm going to make you a big nation, a great nation. Moshe fights back. Like Rashi says, I told Moshe, leave me alone. And what he was telling Moshe is, if you don't leave me alone, I won't be able to do this. So basically he was asking him not to leave him alone. In other words, he was telling Moshe, if you leave me alone, we're going to end them up. So Moshe understood, when he was saying that, he was already telling him, you're going to have to leave me alone. So Moshe said, we're not going to leave you alone. And Ataka works. And right after that, there's a whole scene about a tzur, about a rock. It says in Parshas Kisisa, Moshe Rabbeinu turns to Hashem and he says, Hareini nas kvodecha, I want to see your glory. So Hashem tells him, Hine makom iti, there's a place with me. Yeah. And he tells Moshe Rabbeinu, V'nitzafta al atzur, I want you to stand on the rock. V'hoya ba'avor kvoidi, as my glory is going to pass by, v'samticha b'nikras atzur, I'm going to put you in the cleft of the rock. Uksiv, and afterwards it says, Vayaver Hashem al panav vayikra, Hashem passed by Moshe Rabbeinu, who's now in the cleft of the tzur, in the cleft of a rock. Vayikra, and he called out, Hashem, Hashem, kel rachem v'chanun, shekisharat salam, shech b'bchinas yidgil midas harachamim, Amar, hine makim iti v'samticha b'nikras atzur, l'chayrein emuv and hamshech ha'inyan. When Moshe wanted to bring out the Yud Midas Harachim, the 13 attributes of compassion, Hashem says, no problem, I'll show them to you. But for this, you have to know there's a space with me. And I want you to stand on the tzur. And then when I pass by Vayavar Kvoidi, you're going to go into the Nikras Hatzur. And he passes by and he says, you'll see my back and you won't see my face. And that's the moment Moshe Rabbeinu sees and Hashem gives him, tells him, calls out the Yud Midas Harachim. What's the Hamshach over here? What do you need? It's a rock and you're going to be on the rock and then you go into the rock. So you say, fine, it's one of those mystical parts of the story. The rest of the story you do understand, so you'll put in the rock over there. So he says, the whole Inyan is really the tzur. The kashecho to bechet egel shu chet chamor beyoser. V'achak achutz rechlius loidak inyan akapade belvad elegam amshach elius panecha elchim. Hine amshach zu tzrechlius mebchinas hatzur davka shu mebchinas zulaya gam kenis kalel. After the chet egel, on a conscious level, there was complete separation. They became detached. Because what's chet egel? It's not just a sin. As he puts it, it's a chet chamor beyoser. It's a very heinous sin. It's a very serious sin because it's avodah zarah. Idolatry, which is basically severing the connection. You have a type of sin where you're disobeying what the person asked for. Okay. Yeah, you take in a relationship, a marriage relationship, or a close relationship. So somebody does something wrong. But then there's a type of chet where it's not just a person made a mistake or did something wrong, but it's something that completely betrays the relationship. Yeah, everybody understands that. You have sometimes a wife asks a husband to do something, a husband asks a wife, they don't do it. Maybe they do the opposite, but then it's not just they don't do something. They completely betray the relationship, they go to somebody else, and that person becomes Eila Lekecha Yisrael. This is your new God who took you out of Mitzrayim. And as the Medrash says, that it happened 40 days after Matan Torah. Right? So how embarrassing it is that in the middle of the Sheva Brachas, or middle of the honeymoon, they call it Yerach Dvash, in the middle of 40 days, right? You just got married. It's not years past. Right? Got married and she runs away. So on one level, you could say there's no hope for this relationship. There's taka no hope. Sometimes you look at a situation, the disassociation, the disconnection is so deep, there's no hope. Today you made a golden calf. Even if you're going to say, I want to come back to you, tomorrow you'll make another golden calf. And who you're substituting? You're substituting God, Hashem. And when? 40 days after Matan Torah. Not 40 years, not 80 years, not 100 years, not 1,000 years. It's not you were thrown away in Golos and there was a Hester Ponim, God is concealed. This is by Har Sinai. 40 days later, you just finished Yitzias Mitzrayim, Kriyas Yamsuf, the Man, Matan Torah, and on everything. It's happening right now. And the teacher went away for a few days. Moshe Rabbeinu went out for a few days. It was recess, and boom, the Chet Egel took over. So what Hashem is telling Moshe is, what's the future of this relationship? There's no future in this relationship. We'll come back, it will happen again. So for this, Moshe understands we have to go to a much deeper place where the relationship was never blemished. And that's the idea of V'nitzafta al hatzur. You're going to have to find the fire that exists B'nikras hatzur, in the clefts of the rock, deep in the rock. On the outside, it's all rocky, it's all hard and harsh. There's no fire, there's no flame. It's the opposite. And not only that, as we said, the stone could be in water for hundreds of years, which means on every level, every conscious level, the flame was extinguished. But deep down in the Tzurach HaLamish, you still have a nitzutz, you have a spark. And when Moshe needed, not only they should be forgiven, that's not. Panecha holchem. Hashem said, I'm out of here. V'shalachti malach. I'm going to send an angel. I can't do this anymore. I'll forgive you, but I'll send somebody else. So Moshe says, no. Im ein panecha holchem al taleinu miza. I want your face back. I don't want you to send me a shliach. Hashem said, okay, I forgive them, but we'll send some others. You'll have a relationship with angels. It'll be much simpler. Moshe says, no, we want you. You understand what Moshe was fighting here for? So he wants the pnimius of Ein Sof, the same emes. So how? It's not shaykh. You're not capable of it. You're simple English. You're ruined. You're too wounded because of what the sin represents. What the sin represents. So for this, you need to find out about the tzur, because of the tzur lo haya b'gam. And this is true in everybody's life, right? What does the Chet Egel represent? The Chet Egel represents that at the end of the day, they were slaves in Egypt. With garnished halfen. At the end of the day, you are a wounded, broken person. That's it. I could take you out, I could make the water blood, and we could bring frogs and lice and do spectacles. We could split seas, we can bring you clouds, we could send food from heaven. But when you're a broken, crushed, devastated spirit, nothing is going to help. At the end of the day, your truth is going to emerge. Not today, it'll emerge tomorrow. Tomorrow you'll make another show, it'll emerge the next day. But deep down, there's nobody to trust here. That's the idea. And if that's the truth, so you just end the relationship for everybody's sake. You're going to suffer, I'm going to suffer, so why don't we just move on? It's a miserable life. It's a miserable life. At least, Hashem says, I'll destroy them, so people think that he's angry. No, at least they'll go to Olam Haba. In Olam Haba, there's no trauma, and they'll be normal people. Here, it's a miserable situation. You're a tortured soul, and you're torturing everybody around you. And it's not even about blame. Yeah, you were slaves for 210 years in a foreign culture. That's what happens. So hanichali, leave us alone. Moshe Rabbeinu says, no, we're going to fight for this relationship. And not just, he says, fine, I'll send you a malach who's has much more patience. The malach himself has some issues. So he'll be able to deal with you. You know, you put one sick person with another sick person and they feed off each other's sickness. Like the doctor who told the couple, you know, you guys need to take walks at night. You need to take a walk, and the walk should be 3 hours. Sunday, Monday, Tuesday, she takes the walk. Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, you take the walk. And that's it. 3 hours a whole night. Then it's perfect. So Moshe says, no, im ein panecha, I want the same panim. I want your pnimius. I want everything. This is Moshe Rabbeinu. He doesn't let go. He doesn't let go. So Hashem says, so now we have to be megala chassidus. Luchas shniyas, right? You have to be megala pnimius hatorah. What's pnimius hatorah? Pnimius hatorah, you have to be megala now. You'd give him the sarachamim. That's the nikras hatzur. That's the place where there was no blemish. All the blemishes, all the fires can be extinguished in the conscious levels of the soul. Over there, you could extinguish the fire. Even in the coal, the fire is deeper. Sometimes you don't see it, it's deeper. But over there also, if you put the coal in fire for an hour, for 2 hours, for 5 hours, it's also going to be extinguished. It takes longer, it's true. You see in a bonfire, they extinguish the bonfire, but a day later, it's still on fire because the coal are on fire. So that's more helam, it's more concealed. But then you have a level where it's a rock. And here, paradoxically, you don't see any fire whatsoever. It's not hot. You could touch the rock, you're not getting burnt. You touch the coal, you're going to get burnt. You touch the rock, you're not getting burnt, you're not getting burnt, meaning there's no flame whatsoever. In other words, it's completely extinguished. Not only that, to be sure, you put it in water, and you put it in water for 200 years. So you completed, you destroyed any possible flame. And suddenly you strike it, it's a nitzitz here. It's the pshat that it's a different type of an eish. It's an eish that's builty, it's, as he pulls it, it's not a metzias of eish. And it was always there. And because it was always there, but not as a metzias, so paradoxically it also couldn't be destroyed. On one level, you had no access to it. It's true, you had no access to it. It's just a rock, and it's a cold rock, it's not a hot rock. It's a brentnishkin fire, there's no burning flame. But paradoxically, because of that, also no one else had access to it. So all of the, what you would call, all of the wounds and all of the traumas and all of the blemishes, as he calls it, b'gam, all of the tremendous disconnection and disassociation, all of that can happen on levels where the fire is burning. And that's what gets cut off. That's what gets extinguished. There's no fire. Hashem Elokecha Eish Eichlu, there's no Eish. There's no oichla, there's no eish. You chased away the fire. You cut the electrical wires. There's no electric coming down. Divinity is an electricity. To channel electricity, you need the right wires. Electricity doesn't just get channeled. I want electricity. And I also want electricity. It doesn't happen that way. You need wires. Those are the wires of Torah and mitzvahs. Those are the electrical wires that channel the divine. That's what he's saying in the whole Maamar. Eish. Vayomer Elokim Yiyar. It's eish. It's fire. It's electricity. Spiritual electricity. All the wires were cut. And literally in a person, you could see it. There's situations where the wires are cut, that there's certain connections that your brain is simply not making. Today it's in simple neuroscience. It's not just spiritual stuff. There's certain emotions you're not capable of. There's certain experiences you're not capable of. There's certain levels of empathy. People who are sociopaths, go talk to them. People who are narcissistic personality disorder. People who literally parts of their brain, they cut off. So it's very easy to give up and say, this is just a tortured life with no purpose whatsoever. And that's what Hashem was telling Moshe. If not, the whole story doesn't make sense. Who was right, Hashem or Moshe? God is like, go like Moshe says, don't start up with me, I'm strong, you're going to erase me from the Sefer Torah. So it's okay, if you don't forgive them, erase me from the Sefer Torah. Well, you just threatened God. Well, so he'll erase you from the Sefer Torah. What's going to happen if he erases you from the Sefer Torah? Yeah. Like Hersh Lastapoli used to say, he was a poor man. So he would come to the Gvirim and he would say, if you don't give me bread tonight, I'm going to do what my father did. So they all got scared and they gave him. So finally one guy says, what did your father do? My father stayed hungry, I'll do the same thing. One guy had the seichel to ask him, what did your father do? And they were all frightened. It's like funny, Moshe says, if you don't forgive them, erase me. So what's going to happen? So we'll erase you. We'll erase your name. So what's going to happen? At the surface, it looks like what is a child play? And then Moshe wins. But that's the whole Vart. The Vart is that it's not a pesach. Hashem is talking the functional way of the world. This is how the Creator needs to talk. There's a system. Nobody's going to change the system. After everything you talk about tshuva, you're never going to say, so let's just make a system, Torah mitzvahs. We don't need wires, we don't need this. No, there's a system. That's what the Creator said. The world was created a certain way. And either you build it or you destroy it.
Moshe said something more profound. Erase me means the whole Torah would not make sense because you already wrote it. And there was Moshe a lot of
Yeah.
So if you erase it, the whole thing makes
exactly
sense. Just like a world makes no sense.
Yeah.
So he's saying actually
Yeah.
just
Right.
You have to now rearrange the letters of Torah in such a way that it makes no sense.
Yeah. So the pshat is that's what Moshe was megala. At this moment, Moshe was revealing a deeper truth. What's this deeper truth? That all the wires that were cut in the person, all the electrical wires that were channeling what you would call a full, healthy, functional life, they're gone, they're cut. It's like this stone that was in water for thousands of years. There's no fire anymore. There's no electricity anymore. But there's a nekuda over there, there was no blemish. And that's what tshuva really means. Tshuva means learning the truth that, it's unbelievable. This is like the foundation of the whole new world of recovery, of healing, of transformation. This is the place where nobody can create damage, not even you. Not because you didn't make bad choices. You made terrible choices, or somebody else made terrible choices. Or just the circumstances of life, not even choices. The circumstances of life created all these disastrous situations where half of my personality is shut down and the other half is damaged. But in this space of the tzur, the nitzutz is there. And nobody has access to it, to destroy it. Aya was in water and you don't feel it, I know. That's the mila. The fact that you don't feel it also means that it was never eliminated. You have no access to it. And when you're makkah, when you strike the Evan, you could reveal the nitzutz, and over there was never a blemish. And now, when you recreate the relationship, the self, from that space, it's a whole different magnitude. Because you went to a place in the fire that was beyond consciousness. You had to touch a place that it wasn't a metzius. It was from a place that's not metzius. It's a place of ayin. What we speak about ayin, right? Ayin is no thing, nothing, no thing. Because if it was a thing, it would have been extinguished. Somebody would have had access to it. Somebody could cut those wires. That electricity, that's conscious electricity that's flowing, you could also cut. You can say bye, and the electrons run away. They're gone. You pull out the plug, right, of the refrigerator, the electricity is not coming to the refrigerator. Sorry, it's gone. The refrigerator, everything gets spoiled. You pull out the plug from the computer is not functioning anymore. It's a dead computer. And the same is true spiritually. You pull out the neshama from the guf, it's a dead guf, it's a mace, it's a corpse. That's what it is. And that's the tumah. This is the connection to paraduma. There's no electricity anymore. It's a guf mace. It's called aviyah vois hatumah. Why? Because kedusha is chayim, kedusha is life. And the only source of life is Ein Sof, infinity, Hashem. So when there's a relationship, when there's a flow, there's life. Eish oichlo, there's a fire. And the fire is a brenta fire, it's burning. Oh, Vada.
So it's actually...
Huh? This is Moshe Rabbeinu. This is the beginning of Moshe. This is a Rebbe, huh? It's a good question, yeah.
On the physics level, it makes a lot of sense. So, because it looks like a mitzvah is just an easy fuel. If you do mitzvahs, so it's like you're fueling the fire. It's like a shochlo. It's easy for Rebbeinu Shalom to maintain that fire. But somebody who's totally cut off is like a stone. In order to extract that fire, it needs to strike really hard. Yeah. Because the flintstone is one of the hardest materials.
Right, yeah.
Right, so to strike that,
yeah,
and to get the spark out of that, you need to make a lot of effort.
Yeah.
So you have to
Yeah.
So it's not an easy fire to extract.
No.
It's one of the hardest fires.
Right.
Much easier to do mitzvahs.
So Torah mitzvahs is the regular fuel, literally the fuel, that literally channels, grounds, and brings out and reveals the divine flame. Here we're talking about a case like Rebbe Elazar ben Derdaya, where everything was extinguished because there was no fuel, the opposite. And that's what she told him. She told him, you're a neficha. You're literally like the ear that you just passed, that literally has no substance. It comes out for a few seconds. It does create a horrible smell. And then boom, it's gone forever, for eternity. Nobody's ever going to remember this neficha. Nobody's going to write a biography about it. There's not even anything to remember. There's no substance. And that's you. That was the hakash. She struck the rock. This woman struck the rock. And it's interesting, she was the only one who can get to him. If he would have come to a psach chashiv, a tzadik, a talmid chacham, leave me alone. I've been there, done that. It was she in that space that she touched him. He saw the truth of it. He felt it. And because you're going to a place of ayin, of no thing, so paradoxically, it's also nothing that can get distinguished. But it's also nothing that you had access to. It's nothing that you ever touched. So it's something that remained inside of you like a fire in the stone. There was no conscious experience of it. But that's why it also doesn't get destroyed. So to get to that, you have to strike the rock. And as you said, the flintstone is such a hard material. It's not easy to get the spark. It takes a lot of work. And this is what Adam and Chava had to discover Mitzvah Shabbos after the Chet Tzadas. Till then, there was light. Friday night, the Gemara says, Lamed Vav Shas, Shim Shai, it was light for 36 hours. Friday night, Shabbos day, because it was Shabbos. Mitzvah Shabbos was the first time Adam was created Friday. Mitzvah Shabbos was the first time Adam and Chava saw darkness. And the Gemara says they were overwhelmed from fear, because they never touched darkness. Adam and Chava only touched light. Their entire experience, suddenly they saw darkness. In a person's life, that's the moment that they need to find the tzur. And that's what Adam found, Mitzvah Shabbos. Until today, that's what we make Beirei Meirei Eish. Beirei Meirei Eish is not on the fire of God. It's the fire that man creates. That's the special bracha. Because Adam Arishon took the flintstones, the Gemara says in Pesachim, and he knocked them against each other, and he created a nitzitz, and he lit a fire. And that's when he knew that there's hope, even Saturday night, even Mitzvah Shabbos. Mitzvah Shabbos is the chazman of dikaon, of depression. That's why you do Beirei Minim Psalm, because the Neshama Yisrael leaves. Generally, Mitzvah Shabbos, there's an emptiness in the world. That's why everybody, they eat pizza Mitzvah Shabbos. They think that pizza is going to help them. Yeah, anechte ketag. whatever they do, Mitzvah Shabbos, they think they don't understand the source. So when you don't know the source, you think they're going to do this, you're going to do that. So with the help of an you have to know what it is. So that's when Adam and Chava have to find a different fire. It's the fire of the Tzura Chalamish that face dark, that confronts this darkness. So when Rebbe cries, it's not Rebbe was crying because he was Chalila jealous, or even he was crying because it was an emotional experience. It's much more than that. It's the Bacha Rebbe, it's the tears. It's the tears, it's the striking of the rock, the grief that gives you access to a place in yourself that you didn't know about. It's the Eisha B'tzur HaChalamish. And over there, he's Kainai Lami B'Shah Achas. It's not a difference, one Shah or a million Shahs. Because it's not about fueling it in time. It's a Nekuda that's pre-time, that's pre-space. So it's not a difference, one Shah or 1,000 hours. You understand? It's a Nekuda in Ein Sof that's beyond time. Torah and mitzvahs live in time. It's supposed to live in time. There's Man Krishma, there's Man Tefillah, right? There's Man Krishma, there's Man Tefillah, there's Shabbos, there's Yom Tov, there's Mincha, there's Ma'ariv. Torah and mitzvahs are time. There's Sfiras HaOmer is time. Pesach, Shavuos, Sukkot, Chanukah, everything is time. There's Krishma Shalamitas for the nighttime. There's Kriyas Megillas for Purim. There's lighting Chanukah candles for Chanukah. Everything is time. There's time, there's day, there's night. Everything is in Zman. It's in hours. Of course it's hours. There's Zman Tefillah, there's Zman Torah, there's Zman Mitzvahs, there's Oisig Mitzvah Potem and a Mitzvah. The whole Torah Mitzvahs lives in them because that's how we live. We live in time. And it's not a chisaron. You're fueling the fire into time and space. That's the Chiddush. Hashem Elokecha Eish. Eish on its own is Ein Sof. Lo Zo Ikar Elokus Mashalim is Misavim Imenu. But you fuel it through Torah Mitzvahs into time. You sanctify time. Mekadesh Yisrael v'azmanim. Zok the Gemara, Yisrael inu de mekachinu l'zmanim. Mekadesh Yisrael v'azmanim. We create holiness in time through the Chodesh. Bezdin makes a Chodesh, Rish Chodesh. They say it's holy, Mekudesh. When the witnesses come, and that makes a Chalois Kedusha on Rish Chodesh. And Tesvav Nissen could be Pesach, and it's an Isur Chametz with Karas. If you ate Chametz a day early, it's nothing. If I can't eat Chametz Gesundheit. You ate Chametz a few minutes later, and suddenly it's an Isur Karas. It's all in time. Today I eat is nothing. I eat on this day, it's Yom Kippur. It's a whole different Inyan. So everything is in Zman. Of course it's Shoyes, but Yesh Kain Elam B'Shah Achas. The moment he reaches the Nekud of Achas, of oneness, there's a Taich in Chassidus. Shah comes from the word Vayisha Hashem El Hevel Vel Minchasai. Hashem turned to Hevel, right? B'Shah Achas mit ein ker. I heard this from the Rebbe once. Yesh Kain Elam B'Shah Achas. A Yid can Kain Zayin Elam mit ein ker. One turn. Shah from the word Vayisha. Mit ein ker. It's a turn. You're turning, you know what it's it says in Tehillim, I think it's Kuf Beis, Kuf Gimel. Kirchoik Mizrach Memayrev, Hirchik Memenu es Psha'enu. Hashem distanced from us our sins like the distance from east to west. So the way everybody learns it is, you know, you go from Mizrach, you go from Japan, right? From Japan to California. Japan is on the east, California is on the west. It's a nice mahalach. I don't know, probably 18 hours without a break. With a break, it's probably 25 hours. I don't know exactly, but it's a long flight. And when the Tehillim was written, they still didn't fly yet. So from Izrach to Ma'ariv is a Shein in the sea of 9 months. So that's how far Hashem distanced our sins. In other words, He took completely away our sins. There's a beautiful vart. The distance from Mizrach to Ma'ariv is actually less than an inch, right? If it's direction. I'm standing this way, I'm facing this way, Mizrach. What do I have to do to face Ma'ariv? Turn around. I didn't even move, I just turned around. It's directional. The distance is the distance of Mizrach Ma'ariv. It's one turn, literally, Shah Achas, literally a turn. You turned around your face, now I'm facing Ma'ariv. Now I'm facing Mizrach. Whoa, you didn't even move. How long does that take? I don't know, whatever it takes to turn around. That's Yesh Kainon B'Shah Achas. It's not Shah Achas. It took 60 minutes instead of 80 years. It took 20 minutes instead of 100 years. It's Shah Achas in Eichus, in quality it's Shah Achas. It's a different Tnuah. It's a Nekuda where there was no Begam because it's L'mayla Min Azman. So all the wounds in the world didn't touch that Nekuda in you. All the wires over there are completely whole. But not in a way of wires, in a way that transcends wires. And from there you recreate a self. From there you start pulling new wires. In these few shuras in this Maamar, you have contained in potentiality all the literature of the last 30 years on healing of trauma. At least from what I read. Literally. It's mamish tzura chalamish, it's mamish that. It's not 30 books, 30,000 books. Yeah, it's missing the fire. It's missing the fire, Taka. It's missing the fire. Listen, everyone has a tzelem elakim. So the fi'erech, everybody has a tzelem. The pasuk says every person was created in Hashem's image. So that image of Hashem is true in every person. Obviously, there's different levels and where the person is. I mean, you have the pchin of Amalek, you have the pchin of Haman, you have Sheva Umas, you have Chassidic Umas Ha'olam. You have so many different levels, but generally, every person is b'tzelem elakim. So there's a nekuda of elikus in everything.
That's the whole idea of the nekuda of elikus is connected to the flintstone.
Of course, that's the tzur. V'samticha b'nikras hatzur. We learn go into the rock, the clefts of the rock, so you should hide. The clefts of the rock means that's where the spark is. It's a metaphor. B'nikras hatzur. V'nitzafta al hatzur. Now you're standing on top of the tzur. When you're standing on top of the tzur, you're not going to see anything. V'samticha b'nikras hatzur. That's where the spark is. And then Yud Gimel Midas Harachim come out. What's Yud Gimel Midas? What's the idea of Yud Gimel Midas Harachim? Is the idea the relationship that can't be obliterated in any situation, like Rashi brings over there. That with sin, without sin, Yud Gimel Midas Harachim einon chayzrus reikam. They don't come back. What's Yud Gimel Midas Harachim? What is the idea of Yud Gimel Midas Harachim? Sometimes you say words, Hashem karachim v'chan erech habayim v'chesed v'emes. Yeah, it's obviously words, but the words are representing of a relationship that can't be destroyed. Not because you didn't make mistakes, not because we're just forgiving, we just don't have a spine, we don't believe in anything. That's not the idea. The idea is because there is a place where the begam, the blemish, couldn't reach. The conscious fire you expelled, unfortunately you extinguished in your life. It's not there. Yeah, somebody wanted to say something? You want?
What are all these, the whole psychology, what is it worth without, they talk about the self, the source, the core, they don't bring in these two shares of the energy of there's one aspect thing. But it's actually, I want to say something, it makes sense that the tzur, the greenstone, that you call it, is the hardest element. So the person, the opposite of it is a soft. So we're a person that is easily persuaded for any of the zara or any pagamin. He's easily persuaded. He's not as hard. Sometimes people have in many languages you have a expression that his character is like a flintstone, like a krem. His krem means he's like very
tough,
hard, not he can't change. Persuade them to do bad things because Nikuda inside, he knows that he's the so that's the tzur. That's the tzur that everybody has.
Yeah.
And the Baal Tshuva actually strikes it because he lost in a way all the other possibilities.
So the real Baal Tshuva, it's not even talking about the Baal Tshuva like we call, a BTF. It could be an FFB, a Baal Tshuva. You could be a Baal Tshuva who unfortunately becomes an FFB, tries to fit in too much, I'm not going to ask you how you know. No. Very good. FFH from habit. Very good. Or somebody once said FFB is fablunged from birth. But here the nekuda really is, it's an echos, it's a quality of life. Because the person lost everything, they have to strike harder than anybody else. A kol, you don't have to strike. They have to strike. But then they don't have to strike as a punishment. And that's what the Zohar means, b'chela yatir. B'chela yatir means you need koiches to strike a rock. We learned before b'chela yatir means you fell down lower, so it's harder to climb the mountain. Yeah, you have to climb much more. You have to you have to catch up to the tzadik. He's 100 miles ahead, 100 kilometers ahead, and it's up a mountain. Yeah, it's hard. You're going to sweat harder. You're going to have to run marathons, and the tzadik doesn't have to run. But now we're learning a vart, a deeper vart. The chela yatir is you're striking a rock. Because the chitzoni is, the outer shell tells you I'm just a shell of a person, pun intended. Or better, I'm a rock of a person. And you know what, you're right, you are a rock of a person. And you have proof for it. And you have good proof for it. And not only that, you're also right, it's taka stone. And not only it's a stone that was in water. In other words, not only it doesn't have a fire, it can't even have a fire. You take a candle that was in water for 100 years, try lighting it. First, you have to let it dry, and it takes a long time. You know, even a Havdalah candle, they put a little wine, and then you try to reuse it. It's not so simple, yeah? You have to dry it up. Here it was for water, 1,000 years in water. You're not getting close to it. And that's true. On that level, it's true. If you're going to try to light the fire, the same mechanism that you light other fires, you know, good luck. It's not going to happen. You need a dry wick. You need a dry log. It's like making a bonfire after a rain, you know, when they try and camp to make bonfires after the rain. You know, when it was raining like Boime, you're not going to be able to do it because this type of fire has antagonism. It has a hisnagdus. It has an opposition from water. Right. Exactly. But here, it doesn't have that position of water. It can't be extinguished by water. It also can't be ignited in the regular way. It can't. But once you touch it through the hakah, that's the hismarmus, the grief of this person, that's what the idea of Bacher Rebbe Lazar. Why did the Rebbe have to cry? He could say, I want to do tshuva. He cried to the point that his soul left. What was the inyan? This is what penetrated the rock. The Bacher Rebbe Lazar, he destroyed himself in the process. What says he destroyed himself? He actually was recreated. He destroyed the tzurach halamish, the outer surface of the rock, and suddenly he found the nitzutz. And in that space, he was never disconnected. And that's really the big chiddush here. What happens is, and you know, whoever even touched this a little bit, and I know it's not so easy to touch, but we'll understand what I'm saying now. When a person touches this space in themselves, it's not that from now on they become functional people. That's for sure. What happens is something else. They realize that there was a part that was always extremely functional. That's what happens. Lo haya b'gam klal means you come to a part that never needed any healing. Suddenly they knew that the real I knew everything. It had clarity. They just didn't know how much clarity they had. And that's the incredible thing. It's almost you go to a space and you see in that space there was always emotional clarity, there was moral clarity, there was emotional health, there was confidence, there was connection, there was intimacy. It's just the person had no access to it. It's not just mikana lahaba, now you created a new fire. No, you didn't create a new fire. You went to a place where the fire was never extinguished. And that's why tshuva helps retroactively. Tshuva is not just mikana lahaba, it's a big pella in tshuva. The Gemara says, neker avayna mitchilasa. It eliminates everything from the beginning. How does that happen? What do you mean? How can I fix something today that I did 40 years ago? I can't. What am I go back in time? I don't know how to go back in time. Maybe there's a place where you can go back. We live in time. The answer is, and this is the deepest part of it, because lo'haya by b'gam klal, so when you reveal that part in you, it actually goes back 40 years. It goes back 50 years, it goes back 10 years, it goes back 20 years. But in a very, very mystical way. It doesn't just go back like we go back and we apologize. Yeah, well, you apologize to a lot of people, that's important. But there is a tikkun that happens retroactively because in that space, actually, there was complete wholeness always. Yeah. And that path you see was already paved years before you just didn't know about it. It was like I was blindfolded. I'm walking down a path, I'm blindfolded. So I'm falling into ditches, I'm hurting myself, I'm hurting other people, I'm bruised, I'm screaming. But on another level, you weren't blindfolded and you knew exactly where you were going. And the soul navigated the person also. That's the value of to do a mitzvah, even when you think you're not doing anything, you don't feel for it, you're stupid, you're a hypocrite. Once you're going to find out who you are, you see, no, your soul knew exactly what it was doing, it knew exactly, was very happy. I just didn't have the luxury of feeling anything. So fine, so for me, everything was forced. The Rambam says, it's really not kaifenais, because really he wants to. He just doesn't know he wants to. So they're beating him. The Rambam in Hilchas Geirish and Perek Beis, they're beating this guy to give a get, because Bezdin said he has to give a get. They're beating him up. So he says, I want to. And then he goes home and he says, I didn't want to. They forced me. They beat me up. So the halach is, it's a good get. A get has to be beratzen. So the Rambam says, evil. It's called evil. Somebody literally beat the living daylights out of you. I want. What's you joking? Like, don't change the halacha. Don't make a joke out of halacha. He doesn't want. And this is a halacha in Rambam. It's not the Chassidic word. It's a Kedushas Levi and Noyam Elimelech in Be'er Mai. It's a Rambam in Hilchas Geirish. It's pure nigla de halacha de kavar tilchas gedish and peidik beis halacha chaf. When it comes to gittin, karbonis, wherever you need ratzon, you could be koifenos hatriyam reitzan. You could beat him until he says reitzan. If you trust his pnimiyas, so then what do you have to beat him? So he wants. So Ram says, no, you have to have him want, you have to have him say that he wants. A minute later, when you stop beating him and he goes home and he speaks to his friend, he says, these criminals beat me and I didn't want to give a get. And Adar Yom, there's people who did it and they walk around and they say, I didn't want to give a get. They beat me and therefore it's a get puzzle. There's people that do that, they give a get because kaifenais, and then they walk around, they say it was kaifenais. So the emes is the kaifenais has to be al pi halacha, meaning the bezdin, a bezdin kasher paskas that he's mechuyev to give a get. So then it's a chiyuv in Torah. So what's the vart? The vart is that this is the whole nekuda. The Rambam is saying when you say reitzani, you mean it. You just don't know that you mean it because you're nebuch, a wounded soul. One day you'll find out who you are and you, oh wow, of course I wanted it. I just didn't know. So the beating was just to bypass your trauma. That's it. Huh? On that level, it's forced. On another level, it's completely liberated. Like he's going to be so grateful, because at this moment, no, he's not a child. He's an adult who has his wife. His wife is an aguna, and he doesn't want to give her a get. He wants to take revenge, whatever it is. As Toit Meshiga, he's asking for $300,000 Toit tomorrow, whatever his reasons are. Huh?
Asking if there is such a thing. You can hit your child, and you're going to say, it's
well, this guy is an adult. I mean, he's an adult. They have no choice. They're trying to talk to him. No, you have to be very careful. Somebody once, I heard, I think, from Rabbi Manis Friedman, he said that a mother came to him and asked him if she could strike her child, if she could hit her child. So he said it's no problem. However, it shouldn't be impulsive, meaning when you're very, very calm, I want you to sit down with a pen and paper and write up a list when your child is not there, when you're very calm. Go to the water, go to a nice cafe, go to a library, when you're very calm, relaxed. Eat some good food that you like, and then make a list and say, if my child does this, I'm going to hit them. It should be a list of things, and when they follow that, that's when you hit them. It shouldn't be right now you're hitting them. And he says you could start doing it now. Like, what are the things that you have hit him? He takes out the orange juice and he pours it into his cup without permission. I just finished mopping the floor, and the orange juice falls on the floor. I hit him. So he says, okay, you want to put that in the list? Like, you want to right now put in the list that when he spills the orange juice? She says, well, it's a mistake. He says, so it's a mistake. So he didn't mean to ruin your floor. So why did you hit him? Because I got angry. And she said after half an hour, she said, I have nothing on the list. Verstehst? That's the issue. They're not hitting their children. They're wounded people that don't know how to regulate themselves. So they let it out on vulnerable children who can't do anything. They're not going to let it out on me because I'm a big guy. They're not going to let it out on you because you're also a big guy. But their child is a little kid who's vulnerable and helpless and hopeless. So when I'm going crazy, my child is a good carbon. That's called chinuch. That's called a kranke mensch that needs help. So get help. Nobody's judging you. That's the issue. He's hitting a child, why? Because he's regulated. And he said, this is exactly what my child needs right now to become the diamond that he's supposed to become. That's what happens when they hit. When I grew up in yeshiva, there was a lot of hitting. Teachers hit the kids a lot. Somebody was regulated over there. If somebody holds, Shlomo says in Mishnah, if you hold back your shevet, which is your stick, your scepter, you hate your child. But that means discipline. He's talking about discipline. In other words, somebody who's always telling yes to everything doesn't mean you love your child. Can I sit on the screen for 7 hours? Yeah, why not? It's much easier. Can I finish all the shalach manas in 1 hour? Yesh koine lami b'shachas? Yeah, of course. Saying yes to a child 24/7 is not love. Sometimes no is much more love than yes. But that's coming from a place of love, of regulation. Now, I'm not saying that parents can always be regulated. We can't always be regulated. Right? But go hit an adult. Why aren't you hitting an adult? Go hit an adult when you're not regulated. Nobody does that. And if they do, they'll call 911 or Chavedim or even Masaskim or Chaver Kadisha. Yeah, with our children, they can't call 911 on us. So suddenly it becomes chinuch. What's the chinuch? And that was his point. Make a list when you're very calm and say, okay, this is when he deserves a patch. Fine. And suddenly she couldn't find anything. Look at you. Look at you. When you're calm, you would never hit your child. The Rambam speaks about somebody who's giving an aguna. There's an aguna, and a woman can't remarry for 15 years. She can't remarry for 15 years. They spoke to him 100 times, 1,000 times. The guy wants to torture his wife. So what do? Unfortunately, it's very sad. What do? You don't start with beating somebody up, chas v'shalom. Of course not. The guy is torturing his wife. What are you supposed to do? So that's what the halacha says. They're allowed to be kaifanais at Shem B'reitzah. Verstehst? How do we get into all of this? Kaifanais. So what's pshat in the Rambam? The Rambam's pshat is, he says reitzani. One day he's going to say, of course I was sincere. I just didn't know about my sincerity. I was blindfolded. I was literally blindfolded. I didn't know that this is a beautiful path. I saw this path as a path to Gehenna. No, this is a path to Gan Eden. I just didn't know. I was blindfolded. Now you take over you say, whoa, that was a beautiful path. So on another level, when you go to the Tzur, you see there was never a Pgam. You always knew everything. The level of the Eish in the Tzur HaChalamish always had clarity of everything. I just didn't have access to it. You were never abandoned, ever, even for a second. The wires that channeled the electricity that I should feel it in my brain were cut. Those wires were cut. So the fire wasn't coming in. But there was a deeper consciousness, super consciousness. You'd give Midas Harachimim in Kabbalah, it's called Keser. So Midas Harachimim known as Keser. It's beyond Chachman. Over there was always clarity. I want to just finish this if hey. So it'll be another few minutes, and then Be'ezer Hashem will finish the Maamar on Monday. Another nekuda is shepirush tzur kepshuti hulashon chayzik shebeklalos uinyan hagvoris. The word tzur, you know what the word tzur means? Tzur means strong, powerful. Like tzur Yisrael v'goyalai, right? Those who there's a nusach tzur Yisrael v'goyalai. It's not the Alter Rebbe's nusach, but it's a nusach of many Sidurim. What's Tzur Yisrael? The rock of Yisrael. Tzur Mizgabeinu, we say in the morning. Tzur Mizgabeinu, Magin Yishenu, Mizgav Ba'adeinu. Tzur Mizgabeinu means the rock that keeps us, the rock that maintains us and holds us. So Tzur is Gvura, Chayzik. And that's why it's called the flintstone. It's very, like you said before, it's very, very hard. And that's why you have to strike it. You're not going to get the spark easily because there's so much protection. We think the protection is because it doesn't want to give us access to the spark. There's also a different reason it's so hard. It's so hard because it doesn't want anybody to get into it and steal it. You understand? It's like a safe. That part of us is so protected, not only because it doesn't want us to have access to the light. It doesn't want the clippers to have access to the light. So it's like you create a safe, and when you're healthy enough and you find the key, you'll be able to open it. When you're not healthy enough, it's locked. So we're learning here that what looks like inaccessible is actually a blessing. Of course it's a blessing that it was inaccessible. Because all the emotional neglect that you experienced couldn't go there. It couldn't touch it because you had no access to it. The parts of myself that are being formed over there, there's access. Everybody has access to it, those who are close to you. Here it's such a deep place that it's protected, it's maintained. And because it's maintained, you always have access to it when you're ready. When you're ready, it was waiting. When you're not ready, you have no access to it. When you're ready, it's right there. It was always there. I was always there. So, shalom aleichem, aleichem. Oh, I was waiting for you. Wo bist du gewesen? 50 years, 52 years, 62 years I've been waiting for you. Shalom aleichem, aleichem shalom. Bruchim abayim. Kaddish Levana, you see a moon. So, b'meila tzur is chayzik. שבכלולוס הוא עניין הגבורס. אך אין הכוונה כאן לעניין הגבורס והדינים. שהרי הוא צריך ליישם שוחס גמם מסרחם שהוא עניין ריבך סודם. אלא הכוונה לעניין הגבורס החיות שמצד הגבורס נמשך תויס וסחייס. We're not here talking about gvura. You have gvura as dinim, stern, strong, harsh. But here Moshe wants to access the Gimel Midas, 193. Here we're talking about gvura in terms of tigboris achayis, an intensity of energy. More love, more energy. Gvura in the sense of intensity, power. tremendous intensity, closeness. That's the tzur. When there's always a flow through gvura, through positive gvura, there's three things. When you have gvura, the flow is with alacrity, with zrizus, swiftness. Gvura allows the recipient to receive the flow internally, integrate it. And gvura also allows it to come in a way of ischalkus, meaning it's dissected and it's divided and it's diversified in different dimensions. The Broden Chassidus, you have chayis and you have behemoths. Behemoths are domesticated mammals. Domesticated mammal would be like a sheep, like a goat, like a donkey, like a cow, like an ox. And chayis are like lions, tigers, cheetahs. So behemoths are also very strong. You don't want to start up with an ox. They're strong donkeys. The power of an ox, it says in the pasuk, produces a lot of grain because the cows would plow the earth, and that's what allows the tfuah to come out. It says in Mishnah. The way that a donkey can carry burdens or an ox can carry a yoke is tremendous. But you can't compare it to the zrizus, to the alacrity, to the swiftness of the chayas. If you know in the jungle, the predators, those are the chayas, the undomesticated wild animals like lionesses, like cheetahs, like tigers, bears. They have a tremendous energy and a zrizus. So it says in Chassidus that they have the pchin of gvura. The strength creates such a zrizus. It's like a power in them. You know, you could see it in their eyes, the way they identify their prey and the way they run. If you ever saw in the jungle or you saw a documentary, it's very, very intense. There's an intensity in them that creates as it is. That's number one. You also have it in communication. Sometimes you talk to somebody, they listen, or they don't listen. And when he says don't listen, it means it's only the head, and they listen, but they don't hear it. But when you speak with gvura, what pshat you speak with gvura? It comes from the depth of your soul. It has like that intensity from your soul. It's very hard that the person should ignore it. Like it says, Dvarim hayotzim min halev, Rabbeinu Tam writes, Sefer HaYashar, Rabbeinu Tam, he says, words that come from the heart enter the heart. And the more they come from your heart, the more they enter the heart. The person can't be apathetic to it. So that's the first idea of gvura, that it comes from a certain inner strength, inner core. That's what Moshe Rabbeinu was touching on, the V'samticha b'nikras hatzur. It's not just the rock that it's hidden. It's also once you touch that place, you're so moved in such a deep way, you're not this passionate anymore. There's a fire of a different magnitude. Once you touch, you find the spark in your tzur, it's different. Now you're not a behemoth anymore. Now even a behemoth is also strong. There's a different level of zriz, a different passion, there's a different gvura that comes out. וכן מצינו גם כבעניין גבורס גשמים, שמע גשמים בישחלקוס ולכל טבע יש גומה מיוחדת. מצד עניין הגבורס ששר שנאי ביוסף ולכן מפתח של גשמים נמצא לאלה ולאלה. The Gemara calls gshomim rain gvura. Ata gibur loylam Hashem mechayim eisim mashvaruch mer dageshem. The beginning of Tainus. Maskirin gshomim in the brach of gvuras. Because geshem, rain, is connected to gvura. So rain could be very powerful, obviously. It's what sustains our planet. But you see that every tipa, the Gemara says about Basra, every tipa has a guma miyuchedes. Every drop of rain has its own guma, its own unique source, its own hole where it comes from. You know, and the two droplets don't mix. So this is the idea of gevura also comes b'hischalkus. What says it comes b'hischalkus? It comes in a way that every drop has its source and its destination. And that's what he said the second yin of gevura is, that it's a granular division that can be integrated by the recipient because it's done with hischalkus and rib. On one hand, you're saying it's very, very intense. On the other hand, the idea of gevura is also tzimtzum, which means you communicate in a way that the other person can hear it. Because sometimes I can express myself, but it's overwhelming. It's like there's a flood. We don't get it. Like Chayni Amagal says, I don't want a big rain that floods everything. The Gemara says Chayni Amagal was, the Mishnah says he was davening for rain, and the point that there was such a flood, he says, no, that's not the way it's supposed to be. You need gevura. Real gevura is also tzimtzum because you want it to be communicated in a way that it's relatable. And that's the idea that it could be niskabel b'pnimius, integrated. And that's why it has to be b'hischalkos, v'riboy, every drop on its own. So when things are very, very intense, you would think you overwhelm the other person. He says no. When it's coming from a very deep pnimius, you also know how to do it in a way that it could be relatable to the other person. It's regulated because you're not trying to convince, you're not trying to manipulate or to exploit or to overwhelm. You're actually trying to communicate. So dvarim hayotzim min halev, when it's really coming from your heart, there's no agenda. If there's no agenda, you want to speak in a way that the other person can hear it. So it's a very interesting thing because you would think it's a paradox. When you're very, very intense, you scream, you holler, you're speaking from your heart. He says that's not speaking from your heart, that's speaking from your agenda. You're not regulated, you're overwhelmed, you're anxious. Because you're anxious, you're screaming. That's not the gvura we're talking about. We're talking about the gvura that comes min halev, it's from the tzur. The zirizus, the chiyus is coming because you're so connected to it. Because you're so connected to it, you can also appreciate the fact that every person has shortcomings and they need to be spoken to in a way that they could listen to. Because you know about your own shortcomings. So when a person communicates passionately, but from a place that's very, very deep, it's without agendas, so they're just speaking earnestly and authentically, so they don't have to coerce and manipulate the other person. The other person feels their sincerity, they're honest. Everybody knows when you criticize somebody else or you want to bring out a flaw in somebody else, where it's coming from. If you're very, very regulated and you're just sharing something from a very pure place, it's going to come across that way. They won't become defensive. Unless they have their own serious blockages that they have to deal with, that's also possible. You can be doing the right thing, but the other person is not ready. But generally, if the person is approachable, yeah, it's very real. It's your authenticity touches their authenticity, and actually have a tremendously real conversation. But if I'm coming from insecurity, you're like threatening me, you're triggering me, which makes sense because that's what happens in relationships. So then my inauthenticity triggers your inauthenticity. My defense mechanisms triggers your defense mechanisms. My anxiety triggers your anxiety. And now it's the exact opposite. Now you just attack back. Or you just don't listen, you shut down. So that's what he says, that real gvura, which comes from such a deep place, it also goes in a way that it's b'hischalkos. It's like every drop of rain has its space. It's biribui. It goes in b'pnimius to the other person, which means it's communicated in a way that's peaceful, that's pleasant, so the other person can actually hear it. Yeah.
Well, it's interesting because right?
Min halev, it comes out from the heart.
So if you take two stones and strike, like if your stone talks to my stone,
Yeah.
then you can have a spark.
Right. If we get beyond the surface of the rock into the spark, so then the two sparks could meet. That's what it says. Adam HaRishon, he took the two stones and he rubbed them very hard against each other, and the two sparks made a fire, and then my spark and your spark can create a beautiful fire together. If not, just my spark hits your rock, so boom, just a spark and a rock, or a rock and a spark. And it takes a lot of safety, because for the person to let go of their rock and allow the other person to ignite their spark, they have to feel that the other person is not going to hit them with a rock. It's going to hit them with a spark. Yeah, not a sledgehammer, right? And that's where the Gemara says that the mafteach of kshamim is very, very high. It says it's one of the three keys: the mafteach shel kshamim, mafteach shel chayim, mafteach shel tchias hamesim. That Hashem doesn't give to a shliach; He keeps it by Himself. The Gemara says in Maseches Tainis, because the key of rain represents something very deep. It's the union of gvura. And he finishes v'zel mashakasu v'nei makamiti v'haya b'var k'vaydi v'samticha b'nikras hatzur. The kivon shemitzad chet ha'egel haya abgam b'bchinas shmiyu k'vaydi shenim shala'esh l'chein hutzach aliyas hamshachim b'bchinas nailis yoyser. So he says a whole new word. Hashem tells Moshe, when my glory passes, when my covet passes, I'm going to put you in the cleft of the rock. Literally, it means you shouldn't see, because my covet is going to pass, and you can't see my face, so be under the rock, and then you'll see my back. So literally, we mean that Hashem passes. Moshe is hiding in the rock. Like Rashi says, he saw the tefillin in the back. He says, the deeper word is the chet ha'egel destroyed kvaidi. The name of Hashem, the glory of Hashem, Kvayt Shemayim, that was destroyed by the Chet HaEgel, because they took Avodah Zarah. So b'meila, and that's the fire that was extinguished. Hashem Elokecha Eish Oichlahu, and now you threw away the fire. You took away that covet, that name. So now the relationship is gone, unless you find a hamshacha, a flow from a much deeper place. You're going to have to get beyond covet. When my glory passes. In other words, if the relationship is only with the kvoid of Hashem, that was gone. They replaced it. They obliterated it. V'haya ba'avor kvoidi. It's a whole different pirush in the Torah. It's not v'haya ba'avor kvoidi. As I pass, make sure you don't look at me. We have to get beyond. We have to get past beyond the union of kavod. Kavod is the hisgalus of Elikos. That's what's kavod. You say kavod HaTorah, kavod Talmidei Chachamim, kavod HaMelech. What's kavod? Kavod is the aura, the glory, the light, the halo, right? You give kavod. What's kavod? Kavod is, it's the makif, it's the chitzonius, it's the environment, it's the ambiance of Ur. And that's what light is. That's what light is. Light is, as we always say, light is communication. Kvoid, Hashem is the glory of Hashem, the revelation of Hashem. There's no revelation anymore. You don't want revelation. You extinguish the revelation. But when you'll get beyond kavod, you're going to go into the nikras hatzur. It's going to go to a place where there was never a b'gam. In the place of kavod, there was a b'gam. There was no gili alakus. You went to the chet ha'egel. You extinguished the kavod of Hashem. It was a war on the shem Hashem. That's what avodah zarah means. Avodah zarah means I substitute God for other things. I substitute truth for lies. I substitute the real energy, the real flow of energy, for other things. I don't want the eish. I get rid of the eish. Istalik minai kegufa b'lanishmasa. V'haya ba'avor kvoidi. But now we have to go beyond the kavod. To the tzur of Hashem, to the atzmius. And over there was no blemish. And then from there you can recreate new wires. And that's when Moshe Rabbeinu says, I want your face. We're going to get back your face. He says, I can't send you my face. You got rid of my face. You got rid of my face. It's almost like, imagine a couple, there was betrayal, and the husband and the wife says, I'm not showing up anymore, but somebody has to run the house. I'll send the cleaning lady. She'll make supper for you. No problem. God said, I'll take care of you. I still love you, but you can't deal with my face. Rashi explains with that. Hashem told Moshe, if you have my face, right, Hine rega, there's going to be a second, you're am kshayoidif, and I'm going to get angry and I'm going to destroy you. In other words, you're not ready for a relationship with my face. It's fine. I'll send a beautiful cook. I'll send a beautiful chef. They'll make food for you. They'll take you to Eretz Yisrael. And Moshe Rabbeinu says, no, I want panecha. How can you have panecha? You don't want panecha. You're not ready for that. You betrayed panecha. It's too scary. It's too overwhelming. You can't show up. Your wires were cut. So that's what he says now. If this is what you want, over there there was no blemish. And that's why he introduces the whole story and he says there's a space with me. What's that? The liyoy shabgam hayib b'chines mokem shezau klolos in yenei shtalshlos brar sivitzaite vavasiv lechenu tzachli sam shachem b'chines shalomaylo b'chines mokem shezau hinei mokem iti kamay sham mokem bottlets like kamaymer hu mekaymer shaloylam ve'eno elam mekaymer. The b'gam was in the world of space. Seder hishtalshalos is called a space. It's not a physical space, but it's a spiritual space. There's Bria, there's Yitzira, there's Asiya. Just like there's time, there's space. You remember we spoke about the Baal Tshuva Yeshkoina Elame B'Shah Achas, because he touches a space that's beyond time. So he also has to touch a space that's beyond space. So to go to Nikras Hatzur, it's Hine Mokaim Iti. On Hine Mokaim Iti, the Medrash says, what's that? The space is with me. He constitutes the space of the world doesn't constitute his space. We call Hashem Baruch HaMakim. Why is Hashem called HaMakim? Baruch HaMakim Baruch Hu. Why is he called HaMakim, the space? Well, he's a space. The pshat is Hu Mekaymer Shel Olam Ve'eno Olam Mekaymer. This is a medrash in Parshas Vayetze. Vayivga B'Makim. B'Makim is Hashem. Vayivga B'Makim. Yaakov Avinu met Hashem and he's called the Makim because he's the space of the world, but the world is not his space. Meaning you can't reduce Hashem to the space of the world. Say, what's Hashem? The space of the world. He is the space of the world, but the space of the world is not him, because he's beyond the space. So Makim is nichlal in him. Makim and Zman are part of him, but they're not him. When you say, I'm in this space, right? This is where I am. I contain this space, and the space contains me. I'm not out of this space. I'm not in your chair, I'm in my chair. See, when you say, Hashem fills the space of the world, yeah, that's true. He fills the space of the world. But the world doesn't fill his space. It's not like God is in this planet and that's it. No. It's true, he is the space of the world. Hu mekaymer shalom, but ein oila mekaymer. So hine makayim iti means makayim is with me. It's in me. It's bottled to me. It's nichlal in me, but it's not me. It's also me. Time, space, everything's man makayim like malchus shmai. So in order to get to nikras hatzur, you have to go to the space of makayim iti. You have to go to the place of bittul hamakayim and bittul hazman. If you remain in space and time, there's no kaina elami b'shah achas. and there's no tikkun of tshuva b'samticha b'nikras hatzor. But because he named Mokamiti, the Begam was where? In Bria, Yitzir Asiya. Why? Because we said, what's Bria, Yitzir Asiya? Remember, Machshava Dibra Maisa, which are the wicks for Eishaychla. Koila Nikra B'Shmi, V'Lichvaydi, Brasim Yitzaytiv Afasisiv. Through Torah Avaydik Melech Sodom, through Machshava Dibra Maisa. But you didn't have Machshava Dibra Maisa. Your Machshava Dibra Maisa was an Avaydik Zorah. So you destroyed Koila Nikra B'Shmi. You destroyed Kvaydi. You see, everything comes together. Everything we learned before in the Maamar. I told you, every Maamar, every line is part of a, it's not Stam Vertlach. We learned before, Koila Nikra B'Shmi V'Lichvaydi. So that's what he's saying. Kvaydi was destroyed. Nikra B'Shmi was destroyed. You're not calling me by my name anymore. You're not interested in me. You're not interested in my cover. There's no Bria, there's no Yitzir, there's no Asiya. So we have to go beyond covered. But for that, we also have to go beyond space. Hine Mokaimiti. There has to be Amshacha beyond Bri Yitzira. See, Bri Yitzira and Siya were not activated. Those wires were not activated. There was no Machshava, there was no Dibur, there was no Maisa, there was no Torah, there was no Aved, there was no Gmilas Chasadim. So these channels were not activated. So in Meila, we need to go to a place beyond Ishtalshalos, beyond space. And that's Mokaim Iti, where the Mokam is bottled to him. You even have to go beyond the place of the face. Panav. Vayaver al Panav means he transcended his face. Vayaver Hashem al Panav, he has to pass over. Just like Ba'avor Kvoidi, you have to pass over the covered. You have to pass over the space. Hine Mokamiti. Because that's where you get to the Nikras Hatzur, to the rock, to the flintstone. So Vayaver Hashem al Panav. If you look at the Panim, the regular Panim, he said, my face is gone. That's what he said, I'm not coming back. V'shalachti malach. So Moshe said, if your face is not going to be here, don't take us. Im ein panecha holchem. Oh, to bring back panecha, you have to go to a place that's beyond the Panim, beyond the revelation, because the Panim is the place where there's revelation. That's where you see a person. That's where your covet is. The covet of a person is in the face. That's where you see their light. So how are you going to plug it back in? The wires are all disconnected. So you have to go to a place where the disconnect didn't touch it, where the fire was never extinguished.
The interface is gone.
The interface is gone. Beautiful. The interface, which brings the higher reality into the lower reality, called the interface, the mamutza, is gone. Vayaver Hashem al Panav, and then there can be Vayikra Hashem Hashem K'Rachav V'Chanav. That's the whole pchina of tshuva. That's what tshuva really means. And that's really the, you could say, B'Pnimius, I just thought about this. You know, we call a person who does an Aveda, we call him a baal Aveda. A baal Aveda. Right? It's interesting. You don't have a baal mitzvah. You have bar mitzvah. You have a baal Aveda. What does Aveda mean? Aveda means sin. But the Pnimius al Pichsidis, the baal Aveda is already telling you the potential. Baal Aveda is somebody that in potentiality he could go to the Pchina of Ahaya Ba'avur Kvaidi, to be over beyond covet, beyond panav. That's the potential. At the moment, he doesn't know it. At the moment, he's takabal aveda. But what's the real pchina? The real pchina is he's creating the potential here for the inyan of Vayaver Hashem al panav, for the inyan of Ba'avor Kvoidi, to transcend, to pass over. The word lavar means lavar, to pass over, right? Va'avar. So literally means avar, you're being over on aveda because you're passing over the borders, the boundaries, like you're going to the wrong rishus. You're being over. Meaning you're passing over borders that you shouldn't be passing over. The pchina is, you're right, you are. You're destroying those borders. But that's going to allow you, the pchina, to be ba'avor kvein. That's the doinus nasal lekazachi, is that when you do tshuva, the sins become mitzvahs, because retroactively it's megala that what you were really doing is you were just preparing yourself to connect to the tzur, which is ba'avor kveidi, which is beyond the covet. Yes.
When he went to the Kracha Hayam, somebody would see he's going to Gehenna now.
Yeah.
Yeah.
The Belazim in the Daya L'chayri was going to for his nus, for his worst moment. Really, he was going for his best moment. So who knew that? Consciously, he didn't know that. But his tzur knew that. His tzur knew that. And his tzur had clarity. This is exactly where you got to go. Yeah. And that's the inyan, that's the real inyan of tshuva. The inyan of tshuva is that the soul always knew. And sometimes you're going to the worst places. From your perspective, it's taka the worst place. From Hashem's perspective, it's your best place. Because it's from this moment that you're actually going to discover everything. So you think you're going to destroy yourself. And you are. I should just add that. You are. But there's a deeper voice in you that's schlepping you there so that you should be able to heal yourself. Because from that Yerida is going to be your Aliyah. Everybody have a beautiful Shabbos, an inspiring Shabbos. Be'ezer Hashem will continue Monday morning this Shia. Bli neder. Yeah.